At 11:47 p.m., the IAEA's Senior Verification Coordinator transmitted a single encrypted message from a vehicle 4 kilometers north of the Natanz fuel enrichment plant. Her equipment, running on the vehicle's battery before IRGC, jamming on local satellite bands made further transmission impossible. The message was 6 words: access denied. All cameras offline. Departing. It reached Vienna at 11:49 p.m. By 11:52 p.m., it was flagged as a Category 1 event and forwarded simultaneously to the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. By 12:04 a.m., the U.S. National Security Council had convened by secure video conference. By 12:19 a.m., the authorization had been transmitted to CENTCOM and to the Israeli Defense Establishment through the established Joint Operations Channel. The authorization was not a surprise. The targeting package for what U.S. planners had designated Operation Iron Sunrise had been at 24-hour activation readiness for 14 months. The intelligence community had assessed with high confidence for 7 months that Iran was within 19 days of sufficient fissile material for a first device. The IAEA expulsion removed the last instrument of verification that had maintained ambiguity about that timeline. Without the cameras, without the inspectors, without the seal verification, the 19-day assessment became a floor, not a ceiling. 14 months of preparation compressed into 32 minutes of authorization. The watch officer at the Threat Analysis Center, who had processed the Category 1 notification, was 31 years old and had spent 4 years tracking the Iranian nuclear fuel cycle through signals, imagery, and open-source analysis. She had written the assessment that first placed the 19-day estimate on the National Security Council's desk 7 months earlier. When the Category 1 flag generated at 11:52 p.m., she was the analyst who elevated it to the 5-flag level that triggered the NSC convening. The message from the IAEA coordinator. 6 words transmitted from a vehicle 4 kilometers north of Natanz had taken 3 minutes to travel from a mountain road in Isfahan province to the most senior policy-making body in the United States. 3 minutes was the gap between the verification failure and the authorization process beginning. It had taken 3 minutes because she had been watching for exactly this signal. The Iranian government's strategic calculation had been documented in intercept intelligence reviewed for 11 months. The calculation was not irrational. It was a logical extension of a deterrence theory that had demonstrated partial effectiveness in North Korea, had been studied extensively by Iranian strategists, and had won precedent of near success in the 1990s Iraqi program. The theory was threshold deterrence. A state approaching the threshold of nuclear capability without crossing into confirmed assembly generates deterrence benefits from ambiguity itself. A state that crosses into confirmed assembly, even before the first device is complete, changes the political calculus for any adversary considering action. The Iranian leadership calculated that expelling the IAEA verifiers, combined with the announcement of continued 90% enrichment production, would cross the threshold at which the political costs of U.S. and Israeli military action outweighed the strategic benefits. Their model projected that world opinion impact, oil price escalation, and regional destabilization risk would combine to prevent authorization. Their model assigned a 23% probability to military action within 96 hours of the expulsion. Their model was wrong on the decisive variable, the timeline. The U.S. and Israeli intelligence assessments had both concluded that 19 days was the outer boundary. After confirmed assembly, the political costs of action would be orders of magnitude higher. The window was not closing gradually. It was closing in 19 days. The authorization framework had been built to move in 32 minutes when this threshold was crossed. The 23% probability the Iranian model assigned to rapid military action was the result of analyzing historical precedents. This operation had no historical precedent. The B-2 Spirit aircraft had been airborne for 11 hours when the authorization transmitted at 12:19 a.m. Both had departed their base on a standard long-range patrol flight plan. Their targeting packages had been uploaded 6 hours into the transit when the intelligence assessment first reached Category 1 threshold. They were now at 51,000 feet over the eastern Mediterranean, 47 minutes from their first aim points. Each B-2 carried 2 GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators. The Fordow fuel enrichment plant is buried under approximately 80 meters of consolidated rock and reinforced concrete inside a mountain near Qom. The GBU-57's 13,600 kilogram penetrating case is designed to remain intact through approximately 60 meters of hardened material before the main charge activates. Against 80 meters of overhead protection, single penetrator success was assessed at 60 to 70% probability. Against 2 sequential penetrators, both following the same entry channel with the second, following the cavity opened by the first, assessed at 91%. The program had been designed for exactly one target profile. Fordow was that profile. The 4 Israeli Air Force F-35Is had launched from Nevatim Air Base 2 hours before the authorization transmitted. They had been holding in a designated orbit over the eastern Mediterranean, configured with GBU-28 penetrating munitions and spice, 2,000 precision guidance systems awaiting the authorization code that arrived at 12:19 a.m. Their targets: the Isfahan Uranium Conversion Facility, the above-ground complex that processed yellowcake uranium into uranium hexafluoride for feed into the centrifuge cascades, and the Natanz surface-level fuel assembly workshops, not underground, accessible to munitions that did not require MOP-class penetration. The Israeli pilots had rehearsed this route 11 times in simulation. The actual routing differed from every simulated profile, a deliberate variance to prevent pattern recognition by Iranian radar analysts. The actual route crossed Jordanian airspace under a diplomatic clearance that Amman had been aware of for 4 days. The 2 EA-18G Growler aircraft from the Carrier Air Wing operating in the eastern Mediterranean launched at 12:26 a.m. The Iranian Integrated Air Defense Network S-300 PMU, 2 batteries, Bavar 373 systems, and the Khordad 15 medium altitude network required suppression before the primary package entered range. 12 AARGM-ER anti-radiation missiles were assigned to the suppression phase, targeting 4 of Iran's highest priority radar emitters on the ingress corridors west of Isfahan and north of Natanz. They launched from F-35Is operating at the edge of Iranian radar coverage, timed to arrive simultaneously with the Growler jamming activation. At 12:44 a.m., both Growlers reached their jamming altitude and activated simultaneously. The S-300 PMU 2 batteries covering the approach corridors attempted to switch to secondary acquisition frequencies. The AARGM-ER missiles were already inbound, having launched 40 seconds before jamming activation on trajectories computed against the known primary frequencies. 3 of 4 reached their targets. The 4th tracked a frequency-hopping emitter that vacated its band with sufficient warning. The radar shut down before impact. The missile impacted terrain 220 meters from the antenna array. The radar came back online 9 minutes later. A follow-on JASSM-ER from a B-1B transiting the region was redirected toward this position and arrived at 1:18 a.m. One Bavar 373 battery, positioned on a ridge 34 kilometers northwest of Natanz, acquired one of the F-35Is at 12:47 a.m. through a radar gap in the growler jamming coverage created by the terrain masking of the ridge itself. The battery achieved a fire control solution and launched 2 Sayed-4 interceptors. The F-35Is electronic warfare suite detected the launch and initiated countermeasures. The aircraft broke left at 4G and dispensed radar decoys. The first Sayed-4 tracked a decoy and passed 60 meters clear. The second, Sayed-4, tracked through the decoy confusion and activated its proximity fuse at 18 meters from the airframe. Shrapnel impacts across the left wing section and left engine cowling caused significant damage. Left engine power reduced to 60%. Fuel system indicating a slow leak. The pilot continued on mission. Weapons release capability was unaffected. He released his 2 GBU-28s against the Natanz Surface Workshop Complex at 1:04 a.m. from the planned release altitude, then diverted toward a forward refueling arrangement in Jordan. He landed with sufficient fuel. The aircraft required depot-level maintenance. The pilot was uninjured. That was the operation's sharpest friction point. An air defense battery that should have been inside the jamming envelope had used terrain masking to find a gap. One aircraft with significant damage. The mission continued. The B-2S reached their Fordow release points at 1:01 a.m. The first GBU-57 released against the primary access shaft leading to Fordow's main centrifuge hall. The impact generated a seismic signature registering on monitoring equipment in 3 neighboring provinces as a 1.8 magnitude event. The second GBU-57 released 11 seconds later on the same azimuth, following the cavity opened by the first penetrator. The second seismic event, 1.4 magnitude, registered 14 seconds after the first. The preliminary assessment at 1:30 a.m. Both penetrators reached their programmed activation depth. Structural integrity of the primary centrifuge hall was assessed as compromised. Whether the cascades had been disrupted sufficiently to require months or years of reconstruction was a question for engineers. The penetrators had reached their design depth. That was the mission parameter against the Natanz underground component. The pilot fuel enrichment plant buried under approximately 8 meters of reinforced concrete, significantly shallower than Fordow. The second B-2 released 2 GBU-57s at 1:03 a.m. Shallower burial made the penetration assessment more confident. Both penetrators were assessed as reaching the primary operational level. By 1:07 a.m., the run-in expenditure total had crossed $1.1 billion. The 4 GBU-57 deliveries alone at approximately $14 million per weapon in the B-2 delivery profile, $56 million for 8 seconds of weapons release. The AARGM-ER suppression, 12 systems at $1.7 million each. The JASSM-ER packages against surviving radar nodes and secondary air defense infrastructure. The Growler operations, the F-35I package, the Israeli Spice 2000 systems. Against this combined expenditure, the Iranian nuclear program's infrastructure investment over 22 years, assessed at $19 to $24 billion in cumulative funding, construction, and development cost. The exchange ratio would not be expressed in dollars. It would be expressed in years. The Isfahan uranium conversion facility received 10 SPAS 2000 precision-guided munitions from the Israeli F-35I package between 1:02 a.m. and 1:06 a.m. The facility's 7 primary processing buildings, the yellowcake storage area, the hexafluoride cylinder yard, and the central control building were each assigned specific aim points. 8 of 10 impacts were confirmed within designated parameters. One SPAS 2000 guidance system experienced a GPS denial event, consistent with the Iranian GPS jamming active in the Isfahan region, and impacted a paved area 140 meters from the intended building. A backup munition completed that engagement. The facility's operational status after the engagement: non-functional as an integrated processing complex. The centrifuge feed supply chain, Isfahan's specific function in Iran's fuel cycle, was assessed as interrupted for a minimum of 18 to 24 months. At 1:09 a.m., Iran activated its ballistic response. 16 Emad medium-range ballistic missiles launched from 3 mobile TEL complexes in Isfahan province and western Khuzestan. Their targets: the Nevatim Air Base in Israel's Negev Desert, from which the F-35Is had departed, and the Dimona Nuclear Research Center, 70 kilometers southeast of Beersheba. The targeting of Dimona was a message. The Emad's conventional payload was not configured to threaten a hardened nuclear research structure in any engineering sense. The message was the operational objective. SBIRS registered the launches at 1:09 a.m. Trajectory analysis resolved within 8 seconds. 16 tracks, medium ballistic profile, inbound toward southern Israel. Time of flight from Isfahan province to the Negev, approximately 8 minutes. The Israeli Arrow 3 battery engaged 11 tracks above 60 kilometers altitude. 8 intercepts confirmed. 3 descended to Arrow 2 engagement altitude. 2 intercepts confirmed. 1 Emad reached terminal phase over the Negev Desert. David Sling engaged it at 14 kilometers altitude. The intercept vehicle closed on the track. The proximity fuse activated. The re-entry vehicle was structurally disrupted at altitude. Its payload impacted open desert 4.2 kilometers from Nevatim's outer fence. No structural damage, no personnel losses. Against the 5 Emads targeting Dimona, Arrow 3 and SM-3, Block 2A, from a U.S. destroyer in the eastern Mediterranean engaged simultaneously. The SM-3 handling 3 tracks on trajectories allowing mid-course intercept. Arrow 3 covering the remaining 2 on steeper arcs. All 5 intercepts confirmed above the atmosphere. 16 Emads. 0 effects on any Israeli installation. At 1:14 a.m., 5 minutes after the Iranian ballistic launch, 11 Fateh 313 solid fuel missiles launched from positions in Khuzestan province toward Hatzerim Air Base in the Negev. The 500-kilometer range barely reached southern Israel from Khuzestan at maximum extension. 7 of 11 were intercepted by David Sling at altitudes between 18 and 32 kilometers. 4 descended to terminal phase. Iron Dome batteries in the Beersheba region engaged all 4. 3 confirmed intercepts. 1 Fateh 313 impacted open terrain 1.8 kilometers from Hatzerim's runway. No structural damage. No personnel losses. By 1:22 a.m., 32 minutes after the Iranian ballistic response began, No additional launches were registering on any theater sensor. The Emad batteries had expended their ready loads. The Fateh 313 units had expended their forward inventory. The surviving S-300PMU, 2 batteries that the AARGM-ER and JASSMER packages had not addressed were active, but had no remaining track contacts within their engagement envelopes. The IRGC command network had not gone silent. It was still transmitting. What it was transmitting was damage assessment traffic, not launch orders. Assessment traffic is the sound of a command authority processing an outcome it had not modeled at any probability above 23%. In the Joint Operations Center, the targeting officer who had compiled the Iron Sunrise aim point list was reviewing the preliminary battle damage assessment at 1:27 a.m. The confirmations populated in the system's standard format. Fordow, assessed as structurally compromised at primary depth. Natanz underground, assessed as structurally compromised. Natanz surface workshops, confirmed non-functional. Isfahan conversion facility, confirmed non-functional. Air defense nodes addressed, 11 of 14. 3 surviving batteries, none positioned to have affected the primary package after the Bavar 373 Ridge battery had expended its ready interceptors against the F-35I. He had spent 22 months building the target list. It had required 14 separate authorization reviews at ministerial and cabinet level. 9 aim points had been removed across those reviews when updated intelligence indicated proximity concerns that could not be adequately cleared. The final list was tighter and more precisely bounded than the original draft. 22 months had executed in 28 minutes of weapons delivery. Time from IAEA, expulsion notification to authorization, 32 minutes. Time from authorization to first weapons impact, 42 minutes. Total active weapons delivery window, 28 minutes from 1:01 a.m. to 1:29 a.m. Primary targets addressed: Fordow Fuel Enrichment Plant, assessed as structurally compromised at primary centrifuge hall depth. Natanz Pilot Fuel Enrichment Plant underground component, assessed as structurally compromised. Natanz surface workshops, confirmed non-functional. Isfahan Uranium Conversion Facility, confirmed non-functional across primary processing functions. Air defense infrastructure along ingress corridors, 11 of 14 cataloged nodes addressed. Iranian ballistic response, 16 Emad MRBM, 11 Fateh 313. Total, 27 systems. Intercepts confirmed, 26 of 27. 1 Emad impacted open desert 4.2 kilometers from Nevatim. No structural damage. No personnel losses from the Iranian response. U.S. and coalition assets degraded. 1 Israeli F-35Is. Significant damage to left-wing section and engine cowling. Pilot uninjured. Aircraft requires depot-level maintenance. All other aircraft operationally intact at mission completion. Personnel losses: U.S. 0. Israeli 0. The single F-35I pilot who diverted to Jordan with reduced engine power landed safely. Counter-operation munitions expended: 4 GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, 12 AARGM-ER, 8 GBU-28, 10 Spice 2000, 16 JASSMER, 11 SM-3 Block 2A, Arrow 3, Arrow 2, and David Sling interceptors covering the Israeli response. Iron Dome against the Fateh 313 terminal phase. Total U.S. munitions expenditure: estimated $890 million. Israeli munitions expenditure: estimated $340 million. Combined, approximately $1.23 billion. Iranian nuclear infrastructure value across confirmed addressed installations. Assessed at $12 to $15 billion of the program's total $19 to $24 billion cumulative investment. Iranian ballistic response expenditure, estimated $480 million in Emad and Fateh 313 inventory. Reconstruction timeline assessment. Fordow, assuming preliminary damage confirmed by 72-hour imagery review. 7 to 12 years for a functionally equivalent replacement, under conditions of international scrutiny that the expulsion of IAEA inspectors had made significantly more intensive rather than less. Natanz underground, 4 to 8 years. Isfahan conversion facility, 18 to 24 months for basic processing capability, 3 to 5 years for full operational equivalence. Iran had spent 22 years and an estimated $19 to $24 billion constructing its nuclear fuel infrastructure. The primary hardened components were addressed in 28 minutes of weapons delivery. The exchange was not symmetrical. Nothing about it was designed to be. The IAEA verification team that had departed Natanz under duress at 11:47 p.m. was in a convoy approaching the Turkish border at 1:30 a.m. The team leader had not yet been informed of what had happened behind her. She would be briefed when she reached Turkish territory. Her 6-word message, transmitted from a vehicle 4 kilometers north of Natanz at 11:49 p.m., had started a sequence that ended at 1:22 a.m. 6 words, 93 minutes. The authorization framework had been built to move exactly that fast when exactly this threshold was crossed. No civilian infrastructure had been targeted. No population centers. No economic facilities unrelated to the nuclear program. The aim points had been the specific installations that had produced the 19-day assessment. Those installations had been addressed. What Iran chose to do next would determine whether the assessment required updating. The mechanism that had produced the 19-day estimate had been addressed. What remained was a program without its primary hardened infrastructure, an air defense network with 11 of 14 catalog nodes non-functional, and a command authority whose damage assessment traffic was still transmitting from Tehran. The cameras were still offline at Natanz. There was nothing left at Natanz that required a camera.